On this episode of AV Week, we talk InfoComm, why tech managers should get their CTS, and a masterclass in support. All this and more on this episode of AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 531. Sorry, Tim.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sennheiser. For over 75 years, Sennheiser has been a leader in pro audio and is now offering a wide variety of touchless and traditional audio solutions for both corporate and educational campus-wide audio.
Welcome to this episode of AV Week. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott, filling in for Mr. Tim Albright for AVNation.tv. This week, I'm pleased to be joined by three of my closest friends. First, we have Melissa Dillman. She is the Director of Business Strategy and Alliances at Staren. How you doing, Melissa?
Hey, I'm doing good. It's great to see you, Matt.
It has been way too long.
Way too long.
Then, just down the highway from me is Mr. Brock McGinnis. He's the Vice President of Sales and Operations for Nationwide Audio Video. How you doing, Brock?
I'm well, and it's great to be here, Matt, and great to see you.
Great to see you. We live like 2 hours away, and we never see each other. It's terrible. And my good friend down in Atlanta, repping the Braves, the new Vice President of Technology for Hall Research is Mr. Ken Eagle. How you doing, Ken?
Hey, Matt. Doing great. Thanks for having me out today.
Thank you for joining us. Before we kick into the stories that Tim asked us to cover, we're going to talk InfoComm, because why not? And he asked me not to, so we're going to do it. Right? This is why you don't give me the reins of the flagship show, because I cause trouble. I will not be attending, and the only reason for that is mainly logistics. Melissa, are you attending? Is Staren attending? What's your view on this?
So, we looked really hard. We were very excited about the summer being able to attend. And then with the pandemic as it's progressed, and Orlando being certainly a hot spot, we made the hard decision not to attend. And it really came down to a matter of the payoff, the risk versus the reward. And can I live with the fact that if I send one of my guys, and Lord forbid he goes home and gets a child sick, can I live with that? And I can't. So to me, for this one, because the next show is in Vegas, and it's only 8 months away, I'm going to go big in Vegas, but we've opted not to go to this one.
Very good. Brock, there's been a lot of, shall we say, pushback on both people that are attending and people that are not attending. You and I are kind of in the same boat, where getting there is really half the battle. It is not. You can't just drive across. You can't just hop on a plane to arrive in Orlando and spend 3-4 days wearing a mask the whole time and dealing with all of that. Is there any valid reason for pushback on either decision?
No, I've stated publicly in the past and will continue that I think AVIXA is doing a great job going ahead with the show to the greatest extent possible. I think that there are a lot of people that want to gather. I was at a regional show myself yesterday. It was fantastic. People haven't seen each other for 18 months or 2 years. Learning about new technology in person is so much better than learning on a webinar. And, I was able to see product demonstrated and put my hands on product, and all those things were really positive. The real unfortunate part is, Florida had the skyrocketing COVID numbers in July and August. And today, their daily rates are less than 10% of what they were then. Florida is actually probably as safe as anywhere else on the planet right now. It's just when a lot of corporations, like Melissa's, for example, were making their decisions. We were seeing 26,000 new cases every day. The hospitals were full. And, you kind of look around the room and across the table and go, we would be out of our minds to go there. And today, by those statistics, it's probably more dangerous to go to Texas, to the new headquarters of Hall Technologies. By the way, Matt, it's not research anymore; it's technologies.
My
So
apologies.
anyway, I think it's great for the people that are going. They're going to have a great time. There's going to be less of them. A lot of exhibitors have made decisions, I think, not based on return on investment at all, but they've made the decisions based on the safety, security, liability that they have towards their staff. It's losing your booth deposit or your booth space really is like 10 or 20% of the overall cost of going to an event. So it's not a big deal from that perspective. I'm jealous. I'm going to have, serious FOMO. I'm probably going to pay my $59 to watch the online stuff. But from a personal perspective, crossing the border, having multiple other invasive procedures and all those things, just for the privilege of wearing a mask for 3 days, I think I'm staying home. Ken, on the other hand, is going to the show. You lucky guy.
Yeah, we'll be there. Thanks for the plug, Brock. Hall Technologies, rebranded from Hall Research to Hall Technologies. We will be there. We've made a few changes. Where it's a smaller show, so we're not going to be there full force like we were originally planning. Had the show gone off, without a hitch. So rather than having a booth, we actually have a meeting room. 5474 is our meeting room. It's on the show floor. And we'll be doing some demo out of there. And we have a lot of meetings set up directly with dealers who wanted to be there and wanted to meet with us. So we've arranged to have a space and be there to be able to talk to them. So it's a little different than in InfoComm in the past, but we'll still have a presence. We do have new things to show. We do have new things we want to launch and talk about. And we do have customers who haven't been able to see us in a while. We want to be there to be in front of them. And one of our partners in Canada, DVOD, have been doing a show across the country over the past, I think, 2 months or so. And our sales team have, jumped through all the hoops to get vaccinated and meet all the requirements and have been traveling to Canada and doing that show. And that might be the one you were at, Brock.
That is the one that I was at yesterday. And there was, in fact, a Hall Technologies booth.
Yep, Wayne was there, and he had the table set up. And so, it's great to get out and to see people and to, like you said, Brock, touch the product a little bit and learn in person. So we hope to do some of that at InfoComm, but do it in as safe a way as we can for everyone involved.
Yeah, I think the disappointing side to me is, or has been, just some of the mudslinging back and forth. So I'm glad I was able to bring that back up for everyone and everyone listening, because I got a kick out of it. Let's move on before I get significant hate mail from Tim. This comes to us from AV Technology and avnetwork.com. Why technology managers should get their CTS. Caroline writes a really good piece on really why, if you're a technology manager, you should go ahead and work towards getting your CTS or your CTSD, CTSI, and talks to a friend of ours, Mike Peterson, as well as the one and only Mr. Espinoza. Brock, when you see this, I'm always confused at the occasional pushback to really anyone in the industry getting a certification, getting something they can put on their shingle or put after their name. For technology managers specifically, is there any reason not to go get your CTS?
No. And in fact, it's very, very popular in the technology management community, both in institutions, educational institutions, and corporations. I mean, that is one of the most important things on their resume that will help them get a promotion or help them get their next job. if they're going from a small school to a big school. I think if you look at, for example, the CTSD and CTSI holders in Canada, you'll find that more than 50% of each are in fact employed by institutions or corporations, and I think that's fantastic. As an integrator, I always used to have issues with ill-informed, uneducated customers, because a smart customer is a good customer, and the customers that got wrapped up with only one brand and only one way of doing things, and I've been buying my projectors from this company since 1979, and why should I change now? But with solid education, people are making good decisions, and it equips them to do their job better, as well as communicate better to their superiors who write the checks. Not superiors, to their bosses.
Very, very good. Ken, one of the pushbacks that you hear quite often, usually from the detractors, but notwithstanding, is that the CTS cert may not hold much weight outside of the community, outside of the industry. But especially if you're in a tech manager position, your community is one of the few that recognizes it. Should that not eliminate that point?
Well, you would think it should eliminate that point, but you're right. I hear that same pushback there. Where does it carry weight? So then you got to ask, is it worth the time and the investment to get it? Is it worth me as a business owner to pay for my employee to be away and to go and get it? It should probably be pushed at the higher ed level somewhere, right? Where we're at least getting some knowledge of this outside of just the AV industry, so that it does carry weight and have some value. Because you've got a lot of people coming out of college with IT degrees, with engineering degrees, who end up in this industry here, but they still could use the AV training, and that's not available in the college yet. So we've got to find a way to get them to this, make it knowledgeable. Because you're right, when they come in, and I'm looking at a resume of somebody, and I see, engineering, or I see, you studied business, you see a number of things that come out of a college course or program, but that doesn't necessarily mean they've been prepared for the AV industry. And it would be nice to be able to get people focused on that and get that education so they have that. I know the article talked a bit about too on-the-job training when you're looking at getting your CTS versus actually learning the material. And so there definitely is some study and there's work that's got to be done.
Yeah. Melissa, I'm really glad you're here for this one, because I know that you've worked in the educational side, not the educational industry per se, but the educational side of teaching classes for CTS. You've done stuff on the CTS side as well. What has to happen for a broader acceptance or even knowledge of what a CTS holder brings to their position? What makes that CTS holder hopefully be elevated over another candidate or another employee? What has to happen to continue to increase that awareness?
I think in order to increase the awareness, to get more acceptance, it's got to be probably handled in a little different way. The CTS, I taught it for many, many years. And I found that the best success with that was after somebody had been in the industry for a little bit, because there's a lot of aha moments. All of a sudden they understood why they were doing what they were doing, right? Someone taught me how to do this, but I don't know why. And CTS answered a lot of those questions. That's probably its biggest value. Does that translate to anybody else? Not so much. I've had my CTS, my D and my I for 20 years. Never gotten a raise over it. I've never gotten hired where I'm at. The best I've gotten is, oh, you have a D and an I. You must know something. And that's really what it does, right? It gives us a baseline that says you were able to complete an exam and prove you know something. Does it mean you know it all? No. Does it validate that you know it ongoing? No. But it does set a baseline to begin with. So it's great education. I guess if you're wanting to better yourself and understand what you do better, it's a great tool. If you're doing it because you think it makes you, more money, I've never seen that happen.
I'm not sure, I'll disagree, Melissa. I'm not sure that we're coming into an era now that you won't be able to become a tech manager at a large institution unless you have one of the D or the I. I think that the outside world is beginning to recognize that it is the only thing, not doing sound at your church, not having started in the AV club at school, but it is the only measure of an advanced education and knowledge in our industry. And there is, and there's lots of people with 30 years of experience, but most of them, we all know, have had 1 year of experience 30 times. It's, I think it's a real plus at the company I'm managing today. I've been there a year and 3 months. We've had 2 of our people certified with CTSDs since I arrived. And that was a heavy priority, including getting an AVIXA Apex certification for the company that we're working towards. So I know it's all old hat to you, Melissa. And honestly, I always thought that the D in CTSD was for Dillman, because you taught that course so long at the InfoComm show. But I'm a huge advocate for not just be educated, but show that you're educated. Be willing to write the exam and put yourself on the line. And a lot of smart people in the industry, of course, fail the first once or twice or 3 times before they finally get around to it. But get yourself out there and in the institutional world, it is the only mark of achievement, within AV.
And, Brock, for what you're saying in technology managers, probably 10 years ago when I was in the thick of training, we saw a definite shift where the universities were really focused on it for a variety of reasons. They wanted to be better educated about their system designs. They wanted to be able to make choices wisely. In that, when you focus to into the tech managers of higher ed, I would say they probably are the one group who's done the most in recognizing, understanding, and educating themselves about the AV industry. So they're a little bit of a subset, right? They've done a great job.
I'd like more of our manufacturers to invest in that kind of certification and training as well, because it, there's often a disconnect between design engineers and manufacturers reps. Solely because the design engineer doesn't necessarily respect the manufacturer's rep knowledge and experience about their product. And I don't know if you have these conversations internally, Ken, but it's an immediate barrier breaker if somebody says, no, I'm a CTSI. I know what you guys do every day.
Yeah, no, you're right on. We see that a lot, and I've been involved on the education side of things in the AV industry for quite a while. I've always been a big proponent of pushing it. It definitely carries weight. And one of the things I think one of the things I've always thought was great was having, no matter where you are, if you're on the engineering side or the sales side or somewhere in between, is having a foundational knowledge across all the different disciplines, because that helps you better communicate and understand what's going on in the industry, what your customer needs, what your customer is trying to do. You could have an amazing background in video, but not have much background in audio or in system design, or even understand what happens at the board level inside of a black box that your company produces. There's some foundational knowledge that should be there for everybody, because it makes us stronger as a company when each of our individuals are stronger with their knowledge.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's move on for a minute and hit a story that comes to us from AV Magazine. As I lost my title, a masterclass in AV support. This covers what a university in Glasgow is doing as far as how they're managing support within that facility, and essentially comparing how in a corporate space you may not use your rooms every day, all day long, but in an educational space, they're booked solid 100% of the time, and how that school went about arranging their support department for that. Ken, let me start with you on this one. When we start to looking at supporting a facility, either internally or as an integrator supporting your clients, how do you go about trying to scale your support team appropriately?
That's a tough question, but a very important one. Okay. So there's a couple of things you really got to think about, especially when you're talking about an education institution like this. Number one, these classes run back to back, and as a professor coming in to teach a class, you've got at best about 5 minutes to get your material up electronically and ready to go for your class to see, or you lose it. Right? You lose the audience and you lose the ability, because you've got about maybe a 45-minute class to teach in. So if you lose more than that, you're not going to get your whole lesson plan in. So number one, sense of urgency and response time are critical. Second, when you're doing any kind of update or work in an education environment like this, 90% of the time, you're going to be doing it after hours on the evening or weekend when those classes are not running. So your support team's got to be able to be built around the needs of that institution and what their availability is for you to get in there. And not only that, third, having a closet of hot swappable products, so that if you do have something that's down, you immediately have the ability to swap something out on the fly and get the class back up and running. So again, scalability is having products to back up what you've got out there, and having enough hands, staff, feet on the floor, ready to be dispatched at a moment's notice to keep up with the demanding needs of those back-to-back uses of those rooms.
That's great.
Spend money.
And definitely money. Melissa, you might have stole part of your answer there for a minute on the question I'm going to ask you, but how do you go about properly empowering your support department to be efficient, to be expedient when it comes to a situation?
So conveniently, that article happens to mention our parent company, Midwich.
I noticed that.
And that they're using my support. So at Midwich, what we have is a whole technical department who can answer questions 24/5, and are able to monitor proactively, assist in certainly higher ed where you need that sort of notification quickly to get things up and running. So the My Support team is large. Midwich, spares no expense. We have a lot of guys specialized who can answer all your questions. And the bonus here in the States, you'll probably get to talk to somebody with a British accent. It's not as fun as talking to a Canadian, but
no.
So we've engaged in that, and it's all of our parent companies basically. We all work together and solve problems. It also gives us great visibility, so we can see a problem that starts happening maybe in Europe that we're unaware of in the States. And we can monitor that. And when it happens here, go, oh, hey, we know what that fix is. So I think having a highly skilled team is really important to be able to supply that service.
That's fantastic. Brock, let's wrap this up with you. I kind of like to bring support back to the start. How do you go about ensuring that you're doing everything you can from a design and a sales point to, by extension, ensure that those systems that you've designed or sold are incredibly easy to service? Because no one builds or sells anything that never needs service. I don't care who you are. How do you go about doing that?
I was hoping you could tell me.
Well,
I got a list of brands you can use, but we don't do that on this show.
So standards are important across an enterprise or an institution. And, if necessary, you can move people from one meeting room to another meeting room or one classroom to another classroom. And everything is the same. And the only challenge is when you get into the ultra large lecture theaters where things are really complex, or the large divisible combinable meeting rooms. And those tend to be also the ones that are the highest visibility, the ones that involve the most senior members, and so and have the greatest risk. I have scars from a long career of things breaking down at absolutely the worst time, and the one thing that scar tissue will teach you is to have the conversation right from the beginning about who's going to be using it, how it's going to be used, and who's going to be supporting it and how. So, you can have redundant systems. You can have systems that are hot swappable. But ultimately, the ones that I've had the most success with over the years are simple systems. The simpler it is, the less options the user has, the less they will get themselves in trouble. And that, building things for 90% uses and 90% of users is a way to avoid some of those pitfalls, and then have a professional come in for the 10% uses with the extraordinary equipment for the 10%, with that 10% applications. And frankly, these are conversations that are happening all the time. Extraordinarily expensive to be able to have somebody on staff who, for example, knows how to hot swap a card in a DM matrix switcher, even if they get the right card and the right time. And of course, the card on the shelf is 3 generations of firmware behind, and like it's not as simple. And you can't, in every environment, other perhaps than the military, have that spare matrix switcher behind. So accepting that failure will be inevitable, and let's do everything we possibly can to reduce the potential for failure from the beginning. And often that comes down to good planning and good simplicity. And anybody in the live events business, live events is all about an understanding that everything that can fail will. And when it does fail, it will be at the worst possible time. So our job is to be prepared for that. And it's an interesting generation now of AV buyers, because they understand a persistent need for the systems to be working. Mm-hmm. Once upon a time, it was the big fancy boardroom, and it was one meeting a month, and you went in and tested everything beforehand, and you went through all the slide decks and everything in advance, and it was going to be perfect for the CEO. Now, having an IT customer, IT is a 99.9 uptime requirement in every corporation. And so that customer gets it, and they also get that the users will fail the technology long before the technology itself fails. And when it does fail, as long as there's a mechanism for real quick response, we're good. And Nationwide AV has a lot of service contracts with important institutions.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Part of the deal.
That's a wonderful answer to that question. All right, let's wrap it up there. Thank you all for joining us. Ken, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Hall Technologies, where can they do that?
I love the social media, so you can catch me on all the socials. K Eagle is my username there. And you can always catch Hall Technologies at halltechav.com, and of course at meeting room 5474 at InfoComm if you're there next week in Orlando.
Awesome. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Mr. McGinnis, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Nationwide Audio Video, where can they do that?
They probably don't want to learn more about Nationwide Audio Video, but they
want to learn about you. Come on.
Brock at Nationwide AV. You can find me on Twitter, sometimes ranting, sometimes raving, at Brock McGinnis. And a big fan, of course, of AVNation.tv and all that you do for the industry.
Oh, thank you, sir. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us, my friend. If people want to connect with you, learn more about Starin or the parent company Midwich, where can they do that?
They can always do that at starin.biz. I'm on all the socials, so you can find me there. And it was awesome to get to participate with you today, Matt.
Thank you all for joining us. Tim will never give me the reins again. But if you'd like to connect with me and tell me why Tim should give me the reins, you can hit me up on Twitter at Matt D. Scott and pretty much every other social platform. But more importantly, please visit avnation.tv, where you'll find this show, as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of AV Week.